Gaius Julius Caesar, aka Julius Caesar, was born to Aurelius Caesar and Gaius Caesar on July 12th, 100 BC in Suburra, Rome. His family was pretty well off, or I guess today's middle class family, who could trace their bloodline back to the foundings of Rome. When he was 6 years old, he would start his education with a private tutor, Marcus Antonius Genefo. With Genefo, Julius learned how to read and write, and especially about Roman law and public speaking, which would come in very handy in the future.
At the age of 15, his father died in 85 BC, and he became the head of the house, having to take care of his mom Aurelia and his little sister Julia. At the age of 17, he married his wife Cornelia, the daughter of Cornelius Sina, and received the position of priest of Jupiter, a very important religious role. For the 3 years he held this position, there was a power struggle in Rome. When the power struggle came to an end, a man named Cornelius Sulla came to power in the Republic.
When Sulla came to power, Caesar was in trouble because he was a supporter of the last head of the republic. Gaius Marius and one of his advisors, Cornelius Sulla, who happened to be his father-in-law, were against Sulla, so when they were dead, Sulla started executing many of their followers and supporters. But to his surprise, Sulla offered Julius a deal. He said that if he divorced his wife, he could keep his land and his post of priest of Jupiter, which was more than fair, but he still had to make the decision. He had a day or so to decide. So, instead of divorcing his wife, he chose to get his family together and go into hiding and run. Sulla finally had him captured after a few months, and taking pity on him and his family, banished him from Rome.
After he was banished, he fled to Asia. He was there for 3 years until he heard of Sulla's death. He returned to Rome. Julius became known as a great lawyer and only second to Cicero as an orator, so he decided to go study rhetoric at a place called Rhodes, where Cicero was taught. On his journey, he was captured by pirates, and they demanded to receive 20 talents, or $16,700, but he laughed and insisted that it be 50 talents, or $41,750. When he was 40, he had his first shot at commanding an army. He led 10,000 men in Spain to end tribal revolts, therefore much-needed victories. When he had more ships, he set sail for the rest of his tribal enemies, where the size of his fleet was enough to cause a surrender, to get Rome land about the size of Portugal. Once he returned with everything from war, he was given the honor of a triumphant return and a feast in his honor.
Upon his arrival in Rome, he had his eyes set for running in the consul election. They had arrived the day he was supposed to present himself and register for the election in person. But since Caesar hadn't officially gotten a vote for a triumphant return, he wasn't allowed to enter the city, still being a general, until he got the vote. He pleaded to get the vote quicker and quicker, but his political enemies were able to delay the vote. He tried and tried and tried, but he couldn't not get the vote to go quicker. So he was stuck with a choice, either run for consul or get his triumphant return. He chose to run the election and give up on his triumphant return, which is the most prestigious honor a general in Rome can receive from battle.
He was a shoo-in for consul because he was well liked by most people in Rome, but his political enemies were able to get one of his opponents, Copernicus Bibulus, as co-consul in 59 BC.
After his consulship, he fought and led the Roman army against the Gallians in the Gallic War in 52 BC, which took place in Gaul, or modern-day France. That ended in a Gallic annihilation at the Battle of Alesia. Alesia was a major town center and fort for the Gallic tribes, where Caesar's Roman army, surrounded and aided by cavalry leaders like Mark Antony, totally destroyed Gallic forces, basically ending the war with Roman victory, although there were some minor disputes outside still during the war. This is regarded as one of Julius Caesar's greatest military feats and will be in the history books forever.
As struggles for powers were arising in Rome, Pompey, the leader of Rome, and the Senate sent for Julius. He knew they were going to kill him, so he asked the troops he had, whom he made rich through battle, if they wanted to come with him and commit treason, and they said yes. He had decided if he was really going to do this at the Rubicon River, because once he did, there was no going back, hence the modern term of Rubicon decision. But he crossed, and when he came upon forces sent by Rome, he didn't fight them, he showed them something to make them join him.
Soldiers, Pompey and the Senate have formally declared that Gaius Julius Caesar is an enemy of Rome. They have declared that I am a criminal. They have declared, in effect, that all of you also are criminals. Tribune veto was not exercised. People's Tribune Mark Antony and 50 men of the 13th were assaulted by 1,000 head of Pompeian scum. A tribune of the plebs assaulted on the steps of the Senate House. And uniting of our noble sacraments, our beloved republic is in the hands of madmen. This is a dark day, and I stand at a fork in the road. I can abide the law and surrender my arms to the Senate.
You've got
Watch
me
the republic fall to tyranny and chaos. Or I can go home
got you
with my sword in my hand
dirt.
and knock those maniacs to the Tarpeian Rock.
What do we always
Legionary tigers pull off their
take
forward.
this way too far? Surrender tonight, this time, save tomorrow. The moment that you let me down, this broken alliance leaves me so hollow and wondering how we did the bed that we made
Yes, sir. Certainly.
become a battleground.
Are you with me?
When resistance came, he showed them that his men were made rich by following him, and they saw that if they followed too, they could be made rich as well. So they joined him, and Julius amassed a giant army. So when they got to Rome, they defeated the remaining resistance pretty quickly, and he abolished the Republic in Rome, and later was crowned supreme ruler of Rome in 45 BC, being one of the first single rulers in Rome.
Though his feats in war and politics are impressive, his family life was a little crazy. He had 3 wives in his life. Their names were Cornelia, Pompeia, and Calpurnia. He also had 3 children, but only 2 were biological. Julia, his daughter, was the biological kid of Julius and Cornelia. His other biological child was Caesarion, whose mother was actually the Queen of Egypt, nor other than Cleopatra. And his last child was actually his grandnephew, Octavian, who was adopted by Caesar in his will so he'd get power.
His children would go separate ways. Even as he was alive, they did different things. Julia married Pompey, Caesar's enemy. Octavian would gain power and become the first emperor named Augustus after Caesar died. And his son Caesarion would die at 17 due to being strangled by Romans who kidnapped him. He would have become a great leader in Egypt and Rome because he was son of both Cleopatra and Julius, so that would have made him heir to both thrones.
Caesar would rule for 1 year or so before he was assassinated by former senators who despised him. Even his thought was to befriend Brutus, who led the assassination. He was killed by being stabbed 23 times, and his final famous words would be "Et tu, Brute?" a question to Brutus meaning, "You too, Brutus?" He was killed on March 15, 44 BC in the Curia of Pompeii.
Julius Caesar is important to history because not only did he abolish the Republic, but if he hadn't, the result would have been catastrophic. Because if he hadn't destroyed the Republic, maybe they wouldn't have gotten some of the weird dictators they did, and maybe Rome would still be around, and things like the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and different wars wouldn't have occurred, different people would be alive, and we might not be here today. So that is why Julius Caesar and his life is important to history.